Yes, we're live. Hi, all. Good evening. Hope you're all having a great day. Welcome to this live stream by LiveLaw Academy and Advocate Avani Bansal. LiveLaw Academy, we've started almost 2 years ago, and we've been running some courses in law and other subjects. Sorry, just 1 second. I'm getting some feedback. I'm really sorry for that glitch. Sorry, back again. So here at LiveLaw Academy, we've been running some courses in law and subjects for students who are interested in learning from the experts in the field. And for the past 2 years, we've run multiple courses. We've run courses on constitutional law. We've run a legal mentorship course that was also taken by Avni. So over the course of these 2 years, we've realized that there's a big gap in India when it comes to learning about how to go for abroad education after completing your UG from India, how to go for your PG masters in law abroad. And so, for that reason, we've found an excellent person who's done masters from not one but two countries, and that too from the most premier institution. So, Avni here today will be talking to us about our new course, which we're going to launch, and it is starting on the 11th of February. It is a course, it is a 10-day boot camp where we'll be teaching all about going for masters in law. So, Avni here has done her masters from Oxford as well as Harvard. So she's done her LL.M in law from the Harvard University, USA, and she's done her BCL and MPhil in law from Oxford University. She's also been a practicing advocate for the past 13 years. She's done an excellent series called the Hamara Samvidhan, where she explains the constitution in Hindi for the wire. She's also an activist, and she's been helping us with, I think, courses on constitution and as well as mentoring multiple students through the legal mentorship course. So over the course of this new boot camp that we're launching, which is going to be a 10-day boot camp, we're hoping that we can give an A to Z aspect of all that covers, all that's to be covered when it comes to going for a master's abroad. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Avni to talk to us about this course.
Hi, Parvati. How are you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Right. So, do you have some questions for me, or do you want me to talk about the course in general?
No, firstly, I would like to ask you one question, which I think even studying law myself, as well as hearing from a lot of students, is there is CLAT PG, there are NLUs, there are LL.M options in India, and abroad might be a bit more expensive as well. So the first question I think our viewers would also want to ask is, why go abroad for doing an LL.M?
Yeah, that's a fair question, and thank you so much, Parvati, for getting us started. So before answering why go for LLM abroad, I think we need to first ask ourselves, why do LLM at all, right? Why is there need for higher education in law? Why isn't a 3-year degree in law or a 5-year course like a BLLB or a BSc LLB enough? See, most students who pursue a 5-year course like I did, we study about 5 to 7 subjects in 1 year, which means on average, you're studying about 50 subjects in 5 years. So what your BLLB degree provides you with, or a 5-year law course, or for that matter, even a 3-year law course provides you with, is kind of this generalist knowledge in the field of law. While you are qualified to then take an exam and be a litigating officer or join a top law firm or join a bank as a law officer, so on and so forth, or even write the examination for judiciary, if you are looking at pursuing specialization, because let's understand where is the world moving in this century. It's very much a field where, yes, you have to know a little bit of everything, but you're also required to be a specialist in a certain area. So, for example, in my case, my specialization has been in the field of constitutional law. The reason you need a specialist degree is so that it not only just increases your career prospects, irrespective of what you choose to pursue later, but also it gives you a command over a particular subject. Now, if you were to do, for example, LLM, by the way, is also Parvati of two types. There is what we call a general LLM. But even in a general LLM, for example, what I pursued at Oxford University, the course is called BCL. BCL is basically Oxford's terminology for LLM. When Oxford University started giving a master's course in the field of law, specialist course, at that time it was the first university in the world to give a master's degree to the students of law. So they didn't have this terminology wise, they didn't have this distinction between a bachelor's course and a master's course. So they just called it BCL, which stands for Bachelor's in Civil Law. And now many students of law will know that there's a difference between civil law and common law. India is a common law country. But again, at the time, civil law wasn't understood in the way that we understand it now, in terms of, for example, some countries like France and Germany offering or having a civil law kind of a system. Then civil law meant law of the people. So BCL, Bachelor's in Civil Law, was actually a master's course which gave students specialist knowledge of subject matters which are really relevant for the people and which are in areas which are really, really emerging from the people in a way. Now, having said that, so in a 9 month course, which is what is the usual duration of a master's course or a master's program abroad, Oxford, for instance, allows you to choose up to 4 courses from, let's say, about 50 to 100 courses. They have this huge brochure, wonderful world class faculties, and you just require to choose 4 subjects. So, in a way, the understanding or the expectation is that you will be specializing in these areas. For me, for example, I chose international dispute resolution. I chose jurisprudence. Jurisprudence, by the way, Oxford is considered to be a mecca in a sense for jurisprudence. Jurisprudence, we know, is the philosophy of law, right? And I also did it in international environmental law. So those were my subject choices. But the idea that I'm trying to focus your attention on is the specialist nature of the course. When I went to Harvard, now Harvard's education system is very different. There, the beauty of Harvard Law School, for example, is that not only can you choose courses which are being offered at Harvard Law School, because Harvard, as some of you will know, is situated in Boston and Cambridge in particular. Boston is kind of the bigger city, and the area where Harvard Law School is called Cambridge. It's one part of Boston in a way. And we also know that, for instance, we have MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is based out of Boston. You could even cross register for courses at MIT. So there is a very wide panorama of courses that's available to you. You could cross register, for instance, for courses at Harvard Kennedy School, which is Harvard School for Government and Diplomacy. So if you're looking at interacting with, world-class faculty members on subjects which kind of, go beyond just being relevant for your particular career aspect in mind, if you're looking at becoming a specialist, I think, pursuing higher education or LLM is quintessential. Now, to your exact question, why go abroad? Why not do it from India? Well, I think in India now, at least, you do have some good colleges and good prospects for pursuing LLM, which is becoming better. But it's like asking, why do you want to go to number one for anything, right? Like, for example, if you ask me as a law student, I want to work with the law firm, and I just want to work with the world's top law firm. And if I said to you, well, why don't you work with, India's top law firms? Well, if you're looking at, basing yourself and your knowledge and limiting your career prospects to India, then sure, India has some amazing career prospects in terms of working with a law firm. But if you had the opportunity, and if you had the skills and the know-how, and if you had the requisite guidance at the right time, wouldn't you want to consider working with what we call the magic circle firms? Now, I'll just give you one instance about magic circle firms. I remember when I was in my third year, I had no idea that the top law firms in UK, which are called magic circle firms, their intake period is actually 2 years in advance. So in India, we have a system where by the time you finish your fourth year and you're in your penultimate year, you would go for an internship with a law firm where you're most, positively looking for working after you finish your final year. But that's not true for magic circle firms. Now, I did not have this piece of information when I was in my third year, which means purely because of this information gap or lack of information, Parvati, my options of considering magic circle firms were out. Now, this same information gap, to a large extent, in my experience of over a last decade, applies in the field of pursuing master's education abroad. And let me just give you one instance of it. Now, I'm going a little beyond what you asked me, but this is very important. See, when I was applying, my only thought was I want to go to my dream university, right? And growing up in India, I'd heard the names of Oxford so often when I was first applying, I did not apply to Harvard, okay? Because I was told that Harvard Law School only takes students after a certain number of years of work experience. Since I was applying straight after college, I did not even apply to Harvard. Now, in hindsight, I know that this information, although to some degree is correct, but there are some major exceptions. There are students who go straight after the law school. And how do you make it is, of course, another question, longer conversation. But I did not apply and I limited my choices purely because of information gap. Similarly, I just did not have the bandwidth or the information or the guidance to really have a full-fledged shot at making good scholarship applications. So I was so engrossed in trying to understand the various elements of making an LLM application, such as statement of purpose, getting recommendation of letters, writing a good essay, so on and so forth, that I just didn't have the time or the bandwidth to, look at the multiple scholarship options. As a result, what I did was I just applied to two scholarships simply because they were full scholarships. One is what we call Rhodes, Rhodes, which is named after Mr. Cecil Rhodes. And the other one is a Commonwealth Law Scholarship. And what happened with them is, again, a story. But the point is, I only applied for two scholarships the first time around. I was making my LLM applications because, again, I didn't have full information. The first time I got shortlisted for Commonwealth, I didn't make it in that year. And again, how that didn't happen is another story in itself. But the point is, I just didn't have enough of information, and I did not apply in time to be able to take the full benefit. As a result, by the end of my first year, I think when I pursued my BCL, we're talking about the year 2011. At that time, I remember my average cost coming to about 35 to 40 lakhs. And this is 2011. I'm sure it's gone up significantly now. I had to bear that money or that expenditure myself. So now, in hindsight, 10 years later, I think to myself that if students knew that if they're going to invest 50 lakhs up and onwards, and if they had just a little bit guidance on the way, they will not only be able to make a much better application that otherwise they would just do by themselves, but more importantly, have all the information, have all the guidance to make sure that they not only go to the best college, they also make the most of it when they go there. I'm going to stop here. There are many stories to be told, but yeah, I'm going to stop here for now.
No, but I actually adding on to that, I would just like to say how, for example, if you're from one of the top NLUs in India right now, we're speaking, you already have some seniors who've made it to a few of these colleges. Like you have made it from HNLU. There are many more people who've made it to these colleges. I think the importance of giving guidance would be much more important for the students who are upcoming from colleges that don't have alumni that necessarily went to these colleges. I think that is where really we have a gap to bridge with this particular course we're launching.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
last, because there is no streamlined guidance really. If you look online as well, I
yeah.
mean, I couldn't find any.
Parvati, I'll just give you two examples, okay? So, since I mentioned Rhodes Scholarship, I remember being the first person from my college to be shortlisted for the semi-finals of Rhodes Scholarship. Now, as you said, since there was nobody else from my college who had ever applied for Rhodes or who had been selected for Rhodes, practically speaking, I had zero guidance. Okay, so I remember staying up all night for this interview and then just walking in this interview and thinking, I'm ready. I'm ready with my CV. I can answer all questions. I kept thinking, what are the possible questions they could ask, so on and so forth. My interview lasted a total of about 10 minutes. Okay, so for example, they asked me a question and I gave an answer. Now, at the time, there was nobody telling me what are the different techniques and formats for an interview. So, my classical understanding was that an interview is, for example, what you're witnessing now. Somebody asks a question and I respond, right? So, my answers were very short and cryptic. Okay, so after 10 minutes, they were like, yeah, all right, we are done with you. And I'm like, well, they haven't asked me anything significant for them to be able to really judge me. So, I mean, was all this a farce? Why am I not having a longer conversation if they're giving me a full 100% tuition waiver and they're covering my living expenses? Surely they need to ask me more questions. So I, got out of the interview room quite honestly stumped. Okay. But then I was so disturbed. I kept standing right outside the door to just see, have I done something wrong, or is this how the interviewers are asking question to everybody? Now, some of the judges on that interview panel were also alumni from the oldest law schools in India. And that's where I realized that people who come from the top law schools, at the time at least, now HNLU is doing great. We have many batches out. But when I was applying, we just had about 5 batches out. So I realized older law schools had an advantage because their alumni were actually on the interview panel. I'm not suggesting a bias, but they had much better information in terms of what to expect or what's going to unfold during the interview. So this other person walks in inside the interview room, and she came out of the room after 30 minutes. And I kept just really trying to put my ear really close to the door to see what is she answering differently, what has she done different. And that's when I realized my mistake. So when she was giving her answers, of course, I couldn't hear the entire interview, but I could hear significantly to understand what is it that I did wrong. And what I did wrong was I wasn't giving what we call leading answers. So, for example, you asked me a question, and I tucked in the point about Rhodes Scholarship. So now, when you ask me this question, I have an opportunity to build about Rhodes because I have an interesting story to say. So, leading answer is when you put a hint in your answer for the interviewer to pick on that and ask you the next question. So, in a way, the onus of interview is never on one person who's asking the question. It's like it's not him or her carrying forward the conversation. The burden is equally on the person who is responding. Now, this is a small information point, looking at it from the larger information gap that I'm talking about. But if I knew this at the time, who knows? Probably I would have given a much better shot at Rhodes interview. I'll give you another short example. Okay, so I remember my visa came in really late for UK, for Oxford. So I got to the offer, etc. I knew which college I'm going to. So Oxford has a system where there's Oxford University, and then there are different colleges. And the role of colleges, particularly at Oxford University, is that they kind of act as your living spaces, so places where you will live and eat and network with people. Of course, you have to network with everybody, but they kind of provide your living space and accommodation and a home away from home sort of a thing. And there are different colleges, and amongst them, then there are different competitions and activities, and each college is different in terms of the kind of experience they offer you. For example, I went to Lineker College, and Lineker is a post-grad college, which means only students doing post-grad courses at Oxford University would apply to Lineker, and that was one of the reasons why I chose Lineker. Now, on my day one, I literally, there was a bus from the airport to Oxford. I didn't know where to get down. So I get down, okay, and I see that there's this one large hall where many students are walking. And I'm like, well, today is the first day, like the inauguration ceremony, and there are many students walking in. So I asked somebody, and I realized, oh, this is a place where the ceremony is taking place. So I get down with my huge 2 suitcases, and I, ask the porter there, can I just please, can you watch over my luggage while I attend the ceremony and come back? And all throughout the ceremony, my tension is, where am I going to get a mattress and a pillow? And where am I going to get a bucket and a mug for the evening? And because I'm a vegetarian, I'm thinking, oh, what am I going to eat? Because I'm like, by this time, starving. So on day one, after my dream has come true and have landed at Oxford finally, I'm in this beautiful, breathtaking city. My concern is my bucket and my mug and my pillow and my mattress. Whereas these other Indian students who were coming from older law schools, much established law school, they are discussing about the courses they want to take and the student societies they want to apply to, and how a particular professor is on leave at that time. And I'm like, there are 500 professors. I don't even know their names. The point of this very long story, Parvati, is that I was only focused on getting to Oxford. I had zero bandwidth, zero insights into what am I going to do once I land there. So I had done zero preparation in terms of the professors to look out for the student societies to look out for, how to make most of the career office at Oxford. So my 9 months, my initial 2 or 3 months really went in sort of, acclimatizing to this entire environment. So today, for me, one of the major reasons for doing this course with LiveLaw is I want that students who go from India, they should be prepared to, as we say, hit the ground running, not just make it to the top colleges, but make sure that you're fully armed with all the information you need. You're fully prepared in terms of your mindset to be able to make the most of the 9 months and to be able to have, in business terms, as we say, the maximum return on investment in terms of the investment that you're making, sometimes and mostly by also taking a huge education loan.
I think we should change the name of the course probably to cracking, but also acing Ivy League. So not necessarily just crack it, but we'll ace it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think now you've spoken about how you've made it, but obviously you had 8 gold medals from HNLU. I think that's a story that I know personally. But then, uh, when do you start prepping? Like, how much, how early is too early, or when do I start prepping for masters, both in 5 years UG as well as 3 years UG? How do I go about this?
So, do you want an honest answer, even at the cost of intimidating some of those who might be watching us on live? Uh,
I hopefully there are some first year students also watching us. So go ahead, intimidate
yeah.
us.
So, you start preparing in your childhood, really. And I'll tell you why. So, for
Right.
example, Oxford University, when I was making my CV, I wasn't just listing down what I've done at 5 years, but I actually had to list down what I'd done in school. So, the fact that I was a prefect in my school, and the fact that I was a top debater both in English and Hindi at school, and that I was overall overall best student at school, all of this made a difference. You to understand that Oxford University, you're looking at each batch on average about 100 to 110 students each year. And let's say roughly if students from about 95 countries are applying, you can see the ratio. So most countries will not have any student in that particular year. Some will have one, some will have two. India usually has about 8 to 10 students. So you're looking at a very large pool of very, very qualified applicants. Some of them are coming from very, very well-to-do backgrounds who have gone cross country to do some, amazing, let's say, non-for-profit projects. They have those kind of, opportunities on their CV. So when Oxford is looking at selecting a candidate, they're not just looking at your here and now. They're looking at कि आप रेस जीतने वाला घोड़ा हो, right? And to be able to make that out, they will see your entire kundali, so to say, what you've done right from the very beginning. So that's kind of the long answer to give you a perspective that if you think, oh, I want to apply this year, and so now is the time for me to start preparing, is the wrong way to go about it. You need to have all the information as early as possible to increase your chances of making it to the top colleges. But having said that, in terms of the practicalities of making an application, the cycle is, Parvati, at least a year in advance. So most of these courses, be that in UK or in US, their cycle starts from September of the next year. So if somebody is looking at going to one of these colleges in the fall of 2025, which begins about, first week of September 2025, the applications will open on these universities in the September of 2024. Now, while the applications themselves open in September 2024, there are many scholarship applications, individual scholarship applications, which are not attached to these universities themselves. For example, Rhodes and Commonwealth, they're university agnostic, right? There are some scholarships which are offered by universities. Their deadlines are separate, but there are a lot of these funds these days, which can give you some sort of a relief or a better, even if they're giving you a loan, it would be a much at a much better interest rate than, for example, taking it from a bank, taking an education loan from bank. All of them have different deadlines, which is why I think that if you are looking at making an application in the September of 2024, to be able to land there in the September of 2025, now is when you need to have all this information. There are some scholarships which open up as early as in March, which is why I thought that, if we do this course in February, our cohort, our batch will have the full-fledged information to be able to make it to every single deadline and have ample time on hand to be able to adequately prepare for that.
Right. I remember us having this conversation. We actually preferred to put this somewhere in the summer vacation so that it'd be easier for students. But I remember you emphasizing how important it would be. Maybe this one scholarship could severely help one of our students. So
Yes.
definitely, February is probably the best time to start. So now, you've done studies both from UK as well as USA. So Oxford and Harvard, the two best in the world. What is the difference? And as an Indian student, should I prefer, considering common law country? Should I prefer? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So this is a question I get asked very, very often, Oxford or Harvard. And I've definitely given this example numerous times before. And some of the students, if they've heard my lectures before on YouTube, they will know that, this is what Avani is going to respond, because this is my classic response. First, from a student's perspective, my suggestion is you need to, of course, have a rationale of which all colleges are you going to apply to. So, for example, on average, the every college application fee is about 5,000 rupees. So are you applying? So a lot of times students make this classic mistake of only applying to, let's say, I will only apply to Oxford and Cambridge. I will not apply to any other college in UK. That, in my view, is a bad way of going about it. I always say you have to have a pool of colleges with a certain rationale. What is the rationale? There can be multiple, and I'll discuss this in detail during the course. But you need to apply, of course, to the first year colleges, but also to one or two colleges from, the so-called second tier, and also to one or two colleges from the third tier. Because while you can make the best of your applications, you have absolutely zero control on what's a total cohort and the quality of cohort looking like in that particular year. So while you might want to go to Oxford or Cambridge, let's say you don't make it, then you need to have some offer in hand, come March 2025, by when you will get to know most of the results. So it's very important to choose which colleges will go in your pool very, very carefully. Now, in what ratio do you choose colleges from UK and US is another consideration. But I can tell you that the short answer to your question is that the methodology is absolutely different. The way of teaching, the quality, and the kind of courses which are offered. Let me just simplify it, with one point. See, Oxford is considered to be a very knowledge intensive, in the sense that they emphasize on a lot of what you would call go deep approach. By that, I mean that, let us say, jurisprudence is not, one may argue, a very application based course. Although all of these arguments have their counterpoints, so I'm just trying to make a simple point right now. But don't sort of stretch the argument beyond it. But the idea is that jurisprudence is a course which is knowledge for knowledge's sake, right? A Harvard, you will see, is excelling in those kind of subjects which are very, very application based. So, for example, you will at Harvard see courses like business of litigation. So, let's say you are a top litigating lawyer, you're a partner in a top law firm. But even while you do your law very well, you also need to be able to get the business to be able to make it to the hierarchy in the law firm, right? So, where do the partners of the top law firms go? They go for these courses to understand, if I am serving a company which is $100 billion company, and I'm being their lawyer, what do I need to have in my knowledge, in my skill system, to be able to understand their ecosystem, right? So Harvard has a lot of these application based courses, so which is why I had a great time at both, because they were both very different ways of teaching, very different kinds of course selection. Harvard, for example, also does a lot of cross sectoral things. So, for example, like I said, if I am, you described me as an activist, I'm not sure I'm there yet, but at least my endeavor is in that direction. So, a lot of my work, for instance, cannot be neatly categorized as that of a lawyer. I am looking at doing work which a lot of them may describe as journalism, as teaching slash scholarly work. A lot of my work is on field in terms of politics and advocacy. I think that if you're looking at being a solver of the world's largest problems, they don't come in neat boxes, right? This is a constitutional law problem, or this is a corporate law problem, or that this is an IPR problem. Problems are just problems, right? So Harvard is looking at designing courses and experiences for students who are looking at being problem solvers, and therefore who have an understanding of how to navigate through these different fields, each of which, by the way, is a specialist field in itself. But the problem is, how do we solve something which is at the crossroads of, let's say, constitutional law and corporate law? So this whole traditional thinking in Indian colleges, when you're applying for your honors, I'm at Hidayatullah National Law University, I remember choosing, do I go for constitutional law and corporate law? Now, corporate law wasn't something I was best at or I had a natural inclination for. So I went for subjects like administrative law and constitutional law. But in hindsight, again, I think that was a bad choice. If I had done an honors both in constitutional law and corporate law, I would understand some of the kind of cases I'm dealing with much better than I did then. So my point is, Harvard kind of this breaks through this, very black and white way of looking at things. On the other hand, Oxford, I mean, just the city is a beauty. It's just spewed with these beautiful libraries, and that's an aesthetics I'm going to sort of miss for the rest of my life. So even now, there are days when I wake up, I'm like, yo, yeah, I'm in Delhi and it's a great city, but just nothing compensates for just the overall beauty. And by beauty and aesthetics, I just don't mean in terms of physical beauty, but just the beauty of that experience where you go to a cafe and you're meeting from people around the world, and just the kind of intellectual conversations I've had during that time. It's increased my intellectual appetite and how.
Wonderful answer. I think yeah, that completely answered it. It also kind of shows how inherently what are you seeking to get from this LLM. If you are looking for a place where you can learn how to solve the world's problems, then I think US becomes the answer, and Harvard definitely becomes the answer. But again, if you're going for the pure love for research, for the love for reading, for the love for learning under a
Yeah,
particular professor, maybe.
but just two things very quickly. I want to add on there, Parvati. One is that, listen, when you're applying to these colleges, many times people may think that the same application go to Oxford and Harvard. No,
Right. Mm.
at Harvard Law School, you have to understand what they're looking at to be able to tweak your application and the language used in your application accordingly. When you're going to Oxford, on the other hand, the language will vary very much. And that's something I'm going to again speak at length during the course. That yes, you may think I want to go to Harvard, but then how do you make your language? How do you present what you've done? How do you sort of draft your application in a way that you get more brownie points at Harvard? So, because of the difference in cultures in both the places, your application has to be tweaked differently. That's one. And the other more important thing is, while the love of it and the intellectual appetite, conversations, all of this sounds great, I think there is a more practical aspect to it, which is that if I'm going to invest, let's say, about 50 lakh rupees for a 9 month course, what am I going to do afterwards?
Mm.
Right? And so am I in a position to understand that today is it difficult to get a working visa in UK or US? What are going to be my career options? If I come back from there, is it worth the investment? So on and so forth. So there are all these practical considerations which directly have an impact on your career, which also I think you need a lot of information inside before you sort of make a decision on it.
Right. So when you talk about occupation in the kind of opportunities that open after LLM, one question I've heard a lot of students have is how can I use a foreign LLM? Because any subject that we learn under the BCI in India is relatively close to the Indian laws. So any law that I learn is Indian laws, and how do I apply the knowledge that I've gotten from a foreign university when I come back to India? Can I practice in India with that knowledge, or can I practice abroad again? That is a question I have.
So there are two, three layers to your question. Okay, let me just dissect them one by one. One is, well, once you've done an undergraduate degree from India, you're qualified to write the qualifying exam if you want to do litigation. Okay, that's number one. So a master's course doesn't in any way impact that. But I think what a lot of people have in mind is that, oh, if I'm going for a master's abroad, is that going to automatically increase my career prospects here in India? The answer is yes and no. Yes, well, if you gain specialization in a certain area and you want to come back and work in a, let's say, boutique law firm, let's say you've gone and done a specialization in sports law and you come back to India and you work with the sports law, obviously all of that information is going to help you very much in terms of the 9 month investment that you've made. It's going to be proportionately giving you much more than that. But let us say you just want to do litigation. Now, LLM is not going to directly help you in any way coming back and doing litigation. But as I'm saying, you to remember that what LLM does, if done correctly and from the right place, is that it opens up your mind and it gives you, sort of completely new ways of looking at the same subject area. It gives you a new skill and tool set in terms of going deeper with the subject that you've chosen to practice in. It does not directly sort of translate into a better career prospect. But let us say you are working in the area of environmental law. In India, the options are still very limited. And you go for a 9 months course abroad, you would probably be looking at working with a policy think tank or with an environmental law firm abroad, for which your LLM becomes quintessential. So
Mm.
the point I'm making is, to answers like this, what does my LLM help me with, will depend. There cannot be a generalist answer, Parvati, to begin with. We will have to have an individual understanding of what is it that the person wants to do, why is he or she doing LLM, what are their career options after they complete it, what is their money or financial situation, so on and so forth. So it's going to be a consideration of all these factors to say that for you, doing a master's now is better, or doing a master's after work experiences later. For you, is doing masters at all making sense? Right. So
Right.
while I've done 3 masters and I've spent 3 years and about a crore rupee, my point is, it's not that everybody should go for masters. But if you're contemplating, I want to go for masters, but you haven't thought this through, you also need to think, is the masters for me? And a lot of what we're going to discuss in the course is going to help you clear your mind with that. And third, what do I do post my masters to be able to make the most of it? So all of this is also, I would say, very, very dependent on the individual circumstances of a person, which is why I'm sure you will talk about this at some point, but I just want to bring it up now, that in the way we've designed this 10-day online boot camp, starting from 11th February to 20th February. We've done a couple of things, but I'll just highlight two or three. While it's a group session, so I want to talk to you for 2 hours every day on different aspects of your LLM journey. I think it's very, very important to have individual consultation with each of the participants of the course to be able to do
Right.
precisely this. Apply all of this information to you, to your application, and see what works best for you. And sort of, which is why this individual component is a huge component of the course we're offering. And I'm not aware of anybody else who's doing this. There are, of course, some people who are helping you just get through the admission, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say, I'm here to help you through this LLM journey, not just for you to make it, but for you to understand, how does this whole LLM thing fits in your life plan, so to say.
Right. Thank you. So, wonderful answer again. Now, one thing I want to ask about is, do you have any? So, I've seen that we have some viewers right now. Is there any one particular super tip you can give these students as we conclude this session and take up any questions that they have? Is there any one super tip you can give them this session apart from whatever you'll be telling in the 10-day boot camp?
Yeah, so asking me to do like one super tip is very difficult because for some of you, you may know I've written a book called Life at Law School, which is published with EBC. It's also available on Amazon, where what I've done is I've packed everything I've learned 5 years of law school, 2 years at Oxford, and 1 year at Harvard in this book. So I have many, many super tips in that book, but specifically in the context of law students making an LLM application abroad, I think what many of them do not get early on is that most of these students will be very bright and they would have done a lot of things. So how do you sort of, to be able to make a successful application, I think it's very important that your application comes together as one single piece. The best example that I always use is, think of it like a pearl necklace. There are pearls, but there is this underlying thread that combines all the pearls. So anybody who's reading your application and making a decision on whether to admit you to Oxford or Harvard is going to, on average, spend about 3 to 4 minutes max on your entire long application. So, what do you say in your statement of purpose? What does your recommendation letters say? What is the topic on which you choose to write your essays? All of that has to come together like a pearl necklace, or as I said, like a movie script. Now, it's like, when you're sitting to write down your statement of purpose, it's like, there is so much raw material in the story of my life. How do I best present it to an audience, right? And I can have multiple beginnings, I can have multiple endings. How am I going to best write the story of my life? That's, the LLM application procedure. um,
Right.
and I think it's very important to make sure that the different parts fit in. So sometimes I've seen wonderfully drafted applications where the statement of purpose is reading great and the recommendation letters are reading great and the essay is fine, but all of them are not coming together to give the examiner an understanding of who are you through your paper. Right?
Right.
Most of you know that even today for LLM, there is no interview process, unlike other courses, by the way. So they are going to judge you purely on the basis of the documents you send. So what you are and what your documents reflect might be very different things. So I think just being cognizant of that, I think, is extremely important. Of course, if you enroll for the course, I am going to have an opportunity to work with you on that to see that whether this entire application comes together as one piece or not. But whether or not you come for the course, make sure that when you're making an LLM application, all of it kind of comes together. And some of the key things that you want the examiner to know about you, think of it like 3 words that you think the examiner should think about you as a person once they finish reading your application. Think of those words, keep them at the back of your mind, and then draft your application. So let's say, for example, if you want the examiner to think that she's a very ambitious person, you don't have to say in so many words, oh, I am very ambitious. No, you have to demonstrate how what you've done makes you an ambitious person, right? So that I think is key.
The pearl necklace. I've heard this. I've heard you tell me this before, but yes, wonderful analogy. So I think that comes to the end of our session. But for those who are watching who are actually interested in joining us for this course, let me just give you a brief overview of what we're going to have. So we're going to start on February 11th. Now I know this is going to be a 10-day and it's going to be working days, but we've kept the timing as such that it'll be everybody can accommodate it. It'll be from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. every day. So 2 hours live session with Avni. And over the course of these 10 days, we'll be covering one topic each. We've divided it into 3 phases. So I'll just take you briefly through that. You can read the entire brochure and the entire details. It's pinned on livelaw.in. It's also there on our social media handles right now. So the phase one obviously is going to be the application procedure. So on day one, we'll be discussing about how to choose a country, which university to choose from, which universities to apply to. As Avni already said, applying to one university is not the key. Always have a backup and have a whole plan set out. So helping you make that, helping you understand the whole situation that is there out there, because there's too many countries and too many courses. So that'll be day one. Secondly, it'll be getting the elements of the application right. So your SOP, your LORs, what are the different key elements that will be there? Because since you don't have an interview, what are the other things that you will be sending there, which will be showcasing who you are? On day three, we'll be talking about funding plus scholarships. So what are the different scholarships you have? What are the different deadlines you have? Where to apply, how to apply to? On day four, we'll be starting the phase two, which is once you get into the course, now what? So this is, I think, different what we're doing at LiveLaw Academy than what I've seen anywhere else, which is we're not just giving you guidance on how to get for this LLM program, but rather what to do once you get there. So first day will be on day four, we'll be discussing making the most of the 9 months that you're there for your LLM program, for your master's program. On day five, acing the course, and be most importantly getting good grades. I think Avni itself had once told me that when though she was a gold medalist at HNLU, getting into Oxford first time, the first exam, she realized how writing a paper in UK versus writing a paper in India is two different things altogether. So I think that story will definitely come up on day five, and I'm looking forward to it. And day six is again reading for the course and advanced preparation. So as compared to India, a lot of the courses abroad is solely based on the reading material they give you the week before. So how to prepare for a class, that classroom is not really teaching, but rather just a discussion on all that you've read throughout the week. So that will be day six. Day seven, career options post graduation. So now that you've spent this much money, now that you've lived abroad, how to take it forward from there, how to apply there, how to work there, or even how to come back to India and make the most of your degree. So that will be discussed on day seven. Day eight, I think, is a great option, which is networking, because you're going to be in a class with a room full of people from across the country, but just for 9 months. So, how do you make a network that can last you for a lifetime, and how to make the most of that network, and how to get the ice breaking, I guess? Avni can tell you about that on day eight. And on day nine and day eight onwards, we'll be talking about what to do after the course. That will be phase three, which is post the course, post your LLM. That is probably 1 year or 2 years from now. So, next is identifying your project and opportunities, and how to take your LLM, your degree now, into the next level, like how to maximum utilize this particular degree you've gotten. And on the last day, we'll be talking about the preparation plan for the application, because now we're going to get the road, and we're going to hit it running. So we're going to see how to write, how to get into it, and all that. And I think most importantly, what we're going to give you other than these 10 days is a one-on-one consultation with Avni sitting with you, hopefully for more than an hour and all. And then she'll be discussing with you how to streamline your particular application, your particular CV, into making a great SOP, and which LORs to take. Obviously, there is a limitation to the number of LORs also you can send. So all questions you have personalized for you with your CV so far, your career so far, these questions will be answered in a one-on-one consultation. And as far as I understand, Avni, this is a 1 hour that we've kept that you can take any time in the next 3 months. So as
Yeah,
per
yeah.
your time,
Yeah. Just allow me to
yeah.
build on that a little bit. Just before answering that question, I just want to say one or two things. See, in designing this course, and Parvati, thank you so much. You've been a great help. And what we've done is we've sourced questions and concerns from many people. Over the last 10 years, I've helped individually. I've been teaching at Jindal. I've given students recommendations and so on and so forth. So I've seen many people go through this entire process. So it's not just based on what I have done. I've been there, so I have a lot of information, but I also understand the challenges that people face who are making LLM applications. And many times they've been senior to me, people who've been taking a mid-career break, and many times they've been people who are much younger. So anyhow, so the point is, one of the reasons is, all the earlier courses we have done, we sort of kept them on weekends, etc. The reason we wanted to do this 10 days back to back is so that you have all of the information in front of you in one go. So over this 10 days, our expectation, or my expectation particularly, will be that you come and you listen in. Okay. But while you listen in, you have, what I would say, very clear picture in your head about what is it that you need to do and how do you need to do it. Okay. But we are in February. Once you have all this information, my hope, ideal, is that you start working on your application. Even if you spend about 20 minutes or 30 minutes on your application, you start doing that beginning now. now. What a lot of people do is, come September or October or November of 2024, they will then suddenly feel the pressure and give this 1 month where they say, I'm having a very hard time working my work or education or examination along with making LLM application. So my suggestion is, during these 10 days, even if you spend about 15 minutes doing some of the basic things I will outline for you, you would have done 70 to 75% of work. Okay. Then after the course is done, you take your own sweet time, maybe about 15 days, maybe about a month. For some of you, it could be 2 months, and you get your basic application in process. So get a draft of your letter of recommendations, get a draft of your statement of purpose, get a draft of your essays, all the different elements. You need to have a draft so that when you have the individual consultation with me, it's not just you talking to me, but you showing me the paper. This is what's my application, and then I can give you, feedback in real time in terms of what is not working, so that that individual consultation is a time for you to actually get your application to the finishing line, to the final picture. While in the brochure we've indicated that you can use or cash in, so to say, this 1 hour consultation time with me, ideally within 3 months of this course. But for some exceptional cases, because I don't want some of you calling me in February 2025, say, hey, can I use my 1 month, 1 hour now? So I need to sort of practically be able to outline it for myself, but we will have some flexibility around it. So the idea is, 10 days you come, you tune in, you start little work, you have all the information at the beginning of the year when you not miss a single deadline. And by the end of this 10-day period, we have an individual plan for each of you. Each of the participant needs to have a plan for themselves. Which are the colleges am I going to apply to? What are the deadlines? My initial drafts. Who am I going to take recommendations from? What are the topics I'm going to write an essay from? Am I going to take in an essay which is already published somewhere and tweak that for my LLM application, or write an essay from scratch? Okay. All of this you need to know by the end of 10 days course. Use all of that information, work on it individually, have something on paper, and then call on for the individual consultation when you think you're ready and you just need that final push. So that's kind of the design built into it. There's one more thing I was talking very quickly about networking. See, when I went to Oxford, I was, this Alice in Wonderland, right? Like wide eyed, just landed, completely new world. And as I said, concerned with many, small trivias, which really didn't matter. But that was very different from the time I went to Harvard. So Parvati, when people ask me, do you like, or did you? So you asked which is better or what is different. A lot of times people ask me, which one did you prefer, right? And my bias is a little bit towards Harvard, simply because when I went to Harvard, I'd already done 2 masters at Oxford University. So now I went much more prepared. I'll just give you one example. So when I went to Harvard Law School, on day one of arriving at Harvard Law School, I knew the names of 90% of my classmates. So I had taken the time and the effort to have their entire details, reach out to them on Facebook, get to know about which country they're coming from, what are their areas of specialization, and whatever possible through Facebook. So I remember on day one, we landed Boston, and not everybody had arrived. So the course was yet to begin. And about, I think, 30 or 40 of us had landed. Okay. And so we just said informally, let's all go out for dinner and get to know each other better. And so we were all on this, dining sort of table, one large dining table in a wonderful cafe. And so there's one of my friends, very, very close friends, my best takeaway from Howard. He was like, the I'm going to, take the invoice on me for anybody who can get the names of maximum students here, because we've just arrived and this is our first dinner together, right? And I was like in my head, I'm like, I am acing this boss. Like, you're totally paying for my food. And I got the names of everybody on that table right. And he and others, they were just like, what just happened? Like, you've just come. Have you met everybody? How do you remember the names of everybody? But of course, at the time, what they didn't know was that I was preparing for this, good 2 to 3 months in advance. Now, the advantage of that was, so how does this matter? Okay, good, you know the names of everybody. So what? So I actually became the first Indian student at Harvard Law School to become a Harvard LLM class representative, right? So they have these elected LLM class representatives who kind of work as a student government. And because Harvard also has undergraduate students and they have, LLM students. So two students from the entire Harvard class were in the student government. And I was the first Indian student to become that. And by the way, this wasn't some nomination. This was a proper election, like an American form of election. So I remember there were five students, one from Europe, and one from Africa, so on and so forth. And then the whole international politics of it. So I thought how, like, for example, a lot of African students, by the way, voted for me, and I became a huge fan of theirs, and vice versa. There was this one European candidate. So how the entire European country students, and there were many of them, they were the majority, came together to support him, so on and so forth. And how I had somebody else withdraw so that their votes could come to me. The point is, in hindsight, because I was part of the student government, my experience at Harvard was so much more richer than it would have been if I just went as a student. That was possible because I did this networking in advance. So again, I think the point I'm trying to emphasize through this, hopefully what sounded to you like a fun story, it was definitely fun living through it.
Mm.
But the point was connecting the dots and doing the homework and planning for it. But that's one aspect of networking. There was another problem, Parvati, which I hope we will be able to crack through this course. Please understand this. When somebody goes abroad, even today, let's say somebody from any law school goes abroad, you just know yourself and you're hoping to make new friends when you land in the university or the city that you land in. Now, imagine whatever number of students we have in our cohort, and we might even have multiple smaller cohorts because we don't want to have like a very large cohort. I want to have a smaller, significant, sizable number in each cohort. So if more of you enroll, we're just going to divide you into different batches, all right? But the idea is that we will have a WhatsApp group connecting all of you. The reason
Right.
is that imagine if you go in the September of 2025, in that particular year, in that month, there are so many other students going to so many other universities. So you also need to have a network of students who are pursuing, masters abroad. Hopefully, some of you will become friends for life. But if not, at least you will have an information pool to fall upon instead of just saying, hi, Avni, I'm feeling super cold. I don't think I can stand, Bara winters. What do I do? So I want to make sure that you have a pool of people who feel that, they're all championing for you. So that's kind of the other perk, which I hopefully will translate into a benefit for those of you who enroll for the course.
Right. So, thank you so much for detailing us through that aspect of networking. But yeah, I think with that, I think we've come to the end of the session. I think I've told sufficiently about the course. Anybody who wants to read more about the course, feel free to just go to livelaw.in. We've written all about it. There's a brochure there. You can go through all the details of the days that we will be covering the 10-day bootcamp. The pricing is also there. You can reach out to me directly on WhatsApp. We're actually thinking of giving some specific offers and special offers. So just reach out to me. There's an early bird discount, which is 10% off for the first 10 registrations. I think we're just starting off registrations right now. So if any of you are interested, do register soon. And if any of you want to apply for the scholarships, if you think you're very meritorious and but you need some funds to help you with registering for this particular course, do write to us. So whoever's interested in this course, for the link to register, just WhatsApp me right away. I'll just spell out my number and I'll also put it on the chat box for those of you who want to copy it and just send a WhatsApp message. We'll be unveiling some special offers tonight for the people who WhatsApp, and we'll also be giving you the link for registration and there as well. So if you need any further details, you can ask on the chat or you can just find it on livelaw.in. So my number is 98471 28749. I'll say that again, 98471 28749. I'll be putting that in the chat box as well. So I think, yeah, that's that. If you have any more questions, feel free to just WhatsApp us and we'll get back to you, I think, personally. But yes, that's that.
I just want to say one final thing, Parvati, which is that I hope that not one, but hundreds of you will end up going to Oxford, Harvard, and doing so much better than where I have stopped. And I'm here to help you in that journey. It is my dream that not just students who come from backgrounds, where you can afford to go to these places, but even if you are somebody who thinks, I have it in me to make it to these colleges, I don't have the funds. Hopefully, we will be able to together pave a way out for you. So please understand that while I can understand when I was a student, if somebody said to me a 30K course, it would hit me a little harder. But I do hope the kind of work that's going in, also the fact that it's individual consultation, and the fact that for the kind of money that you're going to spend, this is really nothing. So in our understanding, we've really subsidized the course to a large extent to be able to make sure that most of you sort of get this guidance. Now, but also we also have many scholarships available. Live Law has always emphasized And I am of the same opinion that we need to be able to help the students who don't have the necessary means. So if you think you qualify for the scholarship or that you want some sort of a help, please do reach out to Parvati. And I do hope to see many of you for this course. So thanks very much. And Parvati, with your permission, I'm going to
Thank you so much. We're good. Thank you so much.
bye.
Bye bye.